Hello, hello, and welcome to Plays Well with Others, our podcast about building and participating in highly effective teams while actually enjoying it. So, as always, I'm your host, Andrew Moore, and I am joined by our illustrious co host, as always, Jess Agnew. So, this is episode 17, and in our last episode, in episode 16, we introduced kind of a new format for the show. Not drastically different, so don't worry, but one more focused on a segmented production. So each episode will have these consistent segments and pieces that we'll bring back week after week, as opposed to the longer editorial Jess and I just chopping it up style. Neither one are better or worse, but we did have some luck with the last one in terms of keeping our
Yeah.
thoughts on track and being able to make this as coherent and entertaining as possible. So, with this episode, we wanted to start out with a new segment that I don't have a name for yet, but essentially we'll be sharing these short anecdotes or short stories about things we've encountered since the last episode, or things that have happened to us, we've read, we've seen, heard about, whatever, that will drive us into the commentary segment where we'll talk about the meat of the show. So, Jess and I were both talking rather passionately, I might add, prior to the
Yeah.
starting of this episode about artificial intelligence and the reception that AI has had in various aspects of our life. So, Jess, what do you got? Because it sounds like you've got something interesting that
I
you
had a
teased.
positive experience. Yeah, I had a positive story that I read. And if I can figure out where I read this story, I will give it to Andrew so he can post it in here. I unfortunately cannot remember. This is not my story, though. But as with a lot of new technology, kids are the ones who are kind of getting their hands dirty and really getting into it, I think, and making it useful faster, which I mean, if you have children, you know that's just a thing that happens. When you grow up around technology, your affinity for it is light years beyond old fogies like myself who have to learn and train and reteach our brain. So a teacher was posting about how they've dealt with Chat GPT now being a thing out in the ether. They are an English teacher, I believe. They assign papers that have to be written. And there was a fear that no paper would ever be ethically written again. So this is how they handled it. They said that they broke it up into phases for papers. The first phase is in class, handwritten. The students write out what their prompt is going to be for ChatGPT, what they're going to ask, what they think is going to go well. Then they put it into ChatGPT, they get out a paper, and then they redline it. The student redlines it of, hey, this doesn't make sense. This is a misquote. This isn't actually from the story, which has been known to happen. ChatGPT has been spitting out quotes that are not authentically accurate. So the teacher has them redline their own paper, their own ChatGPT generated paper, and then they either do a new prompt with better information in there so that they can prompt ChatGPT better, or they learn something about how to engage the technology more usefully, or they rewrite the paper, fix the errors that ChatGPT has, and then they submit it again to their teacher. And they have to submit all of this. So they submit the handwritten stuff that they did in class, the redlined paper, and then the final product. And I absolutely loved that because just like with lots of other modern technology, this is now something that's out there that students are going to have access to. So teaching them to use it responsibly and teaching them to use it effectively, that's the next step.
I love that because
I know.
almost
So
naturally,
brilliant.
new technology creates all of this fear, and people
It
respond
does.
either all in, like I'm sign me up, I'm in, I'm part of Skynet, let's go, or it's the devil computer, devil technology, and it's never going to solve any
Yeah.
problems. It's gonna make us worse. Society is over, and I think that's partially a generational thing because it happens every generation. These kids these days,
It does.
right?
Well, if you've ever read Anne of Green Gables, in one of the later stories, there's this series where Diana, Anne's friend, has children, and her mother is complaining about the fact that her kids are always looking at this catalog. And oh, when I was a kid, we didn't have a catalog to look at, which is hysterical now because no kid would pore over a catalog from a store. But this was something like this was new, this new thing that they had, this beautiful, glossy paged catalog that they could pour over. It's just hilarious because it's every single generation we see the same exact thing.
Right. And so that kind of leads me to my story, or my experience from this week was kind of the opposite. So, and I read a post, actually read a series of posts, and it's been kind of bubbling in the back of my head for a few weeks now, where there's this perspective that AI becoming prolific is going to ruin all of our abilities to teach, to learn, and it's gonna make us all dumb, right? And the more that I've thought about it, it's occurred to me that AI is a tool, right? Everything's a tool, at least for now. It hasn't become self-aware. So if you have the opportunity to use a tool that makes you more efficient, that gives you the ability to think about stuff that humans are still really good at thinking about, higher order things, why wouldn't you use it? Just like a internal combustion engine, like there was pushback on that. It's dangerous. It's going to explode. I don't like it. My horse works just fine. But then here we have engines in everybody's garage now, or calculators. Even as recently as when we were in school, it was, you will never get to use a calculator in real life. Well,
you're not going to be walking around with a calculator in your pocket. Turns out we all do.
Yes. In fact, I can Google ChatGPT now and have it tell me what calculation I even need to use.
I did actually do that.
Well, right. So that my response kind of to this prolific idea of, oh no, AI is going to ruin everything is much the same. It does change things forever. Things are different. They will be different, but they're always different. They're always changing, always adapting, always improving. Or in some cases, I suppose there is devolution, de-evolution, but for the most part, you
like
have
Crocs.
A new tool. Look, I won't go into my Crocs opinion on this show. While we are not a technology show, we're also not a fashion show. Never
Which
have
is shocking.
But if
looking
if
at
someone,
us, that's all you think of.
Look, if someone from Tractor Supply wants to sponsor my blue jean wardrobe, I am more than happy. You know where to find me. But that does kind of lead into the topic that we wanted to bring up today, which is not AI specifically. It's digital transformation, which is kind of a theme for the entire show, right? But how do we as individuals push innovative thinking or push technical thinking that really influences those around us? And I don't want to focus specifically on kind of the large enterprise. This is still this is valuable there, but also, as a business owner, as a small business owner, how do I think about digital transformation? How do I think about innovating my business processes, my workflows in such a way that I can leverage AI, I can leverage ChatGPT to make my business process work better, make my life better so that I can, spend time with my family, play with my dog, whatever, more frequently instead of doing labor. Right?
Well, and does this for a small business open up doors that maybe were closed previously? Things that you would have had to have a larger staff for because, there are higher level processes that you thought a computer couldn't run for you that maybe they can now. So maybe it opens the doors for small business owners to expand their processes, or maybe it opens the doors for you to start your small business that you didn't think you were going to be able to do. So there's a lot of positives that could go hand in hand with this.
Yeah, and I had an experience this week where, at work, myself and my team built a fairly innovative new process or new system for our business that is new to the organization. It's a new form of thinking I won't get into the details, but if you're a developer engineer, if you're curious, go ahead and drop me a comment or a DM. But as we were going through the demo process, it's a weird thing because it's not a new website, doesn't have a flashy user interface. It's sending out notifications. So a lot of the stuff, the cool stuff that me as an engineer I really enjoy, is on the back end. It's invisible, and if you don't know it's there, then it's doing its job. But as I'm explaining the underpinnings and why this is important, because it doesn't look that cool, I had a fellow VP he's in the non-technical realm. He piped up. He said, wait. Does this mean that I now have the capability to do XYZ? I was like, well, actually, kind of, yeah. We haven't built it all yet. We haven't expanded it yet. He's, no, I want it. When can I have it? When can I get my hands on it? And I'd actually been considering this for the past few days. I was like, wait, so this guy who's got some tech savvy, he's not an engineer or a developer by any means, but he's got savvy. And so I'd been thinking about this. Like, why is my first reaction to be defensive when somebody goes out of their lane and does technology? And I actually had to think about this. I had to do some introspection because as a technologist, as a VP of software engineering, it feels like my responsibility is to provide technology, to provide engineering. And if I'm not doing that, then I've left something to be desired. But what I'm learning, what I have learned and come to terms with is, wait a second, no. That's how digital transformation starts and how it works. We as technologists, we build services that can be consumed, and it's up to us to make them consumable. And sometimes that means just building the thing and saying, here you go. But sometimes it means explaining it in the right sequence of words and pictures and diagrams that somebody says, oh, no, I see what you're saying. It's not this, it's this over here. When can I have it? That's where the thing starts taking off, and why I texted Jess this afternoon. It's like, that's why this is important. And
what's really cool is when you start to, as Andrew mentioned, this really cool thing that his team built is now presented. And in every single conversation that we've had with a different group, there's been a new idea on how to utilize this. And none of them were the original use case, but every single one of them is valid and transformative and clever. And it's really cool to see how, coming from a different perspective and in a different division, you can look at something and have an entirely new and unique perspective on how it can be implemented and be effective. And that is one of the principal benefits of having tools that you can use, because humans are innovative in how they implement tools, and we have been since the beginning of time. So this is another tool, and there's going to be innovation that we can't even think of right now that's going to come out of this, which is pretty exciting.
Well, that's another thought. Jess, you and I have talked in the past about even our dynamic as we're working together, talking together on this podcast is, I have a habit of, let me go grab onto this idea, and then, oh, there's an idea, and there's an idea, and there's an idea. And then the project manager and you kicks back in like, wait a second, nope, get this back on the tracks. But
well, yeah, at the end of every episode, I'm always like, tactically, you can do this to implement this, because that's where my brain goes. I'm like, all right, these are big ideas. These are great ideas. How do you make them actual? How do you implement them? What are the things you as a person can do to make these things happen?
Well, we experienced that this last week, and it's Wednesday. We're late on this episode, so I apologize. But we experienced that earlier this week where we were having this discussion around digital transformation. We weren't calling it that, but we were looking at our holistic manufacturing pipeline and trying to find out, like, well, there are roadblocks in all of these places, and this new architectural paradigm that I've delivered gives us a means to unblock some of those roadblocks. And it was Jess, myself, and another VP in the organization, and we're all kind of brainstorming, and there's different use cases. And in my normal self, I made a slide deck with a lot of words. It'll have less words on it when people actually see it. But I started out with a problem statement, and then that led to this other leader coming up with another problem statement, and then problem statement. Okay, well, that's all well and good, but how do we actually do it? And that's where Jess came in. It was like asking these questions that I was starting to get frustrated. Because I'm like, why don't you understand what I'm saying? But you asked the question again. I think you would just basically ask the same thing over and over again, trying to get me to
make it smaller.
Right.
Make it bite size.
And finally we got it down to some place to start. It's not perfect. But as a technique, I think that's important. And I think that becomes more important for product professionals to be able to not build or design the product increments, but teach other people around them how to design the product increments themselves and come to the table.
Interesting idea. It changes the face of the conversation a little bit because, talking to, if you're a business analyst, you know that the number one thing you want to come out of a requirement session with is not the requirements. It's understanding why they need the thing. What's the business value? What are you trying to achieve? At the end of the day, what problem are you trying to solve? How are you trying to make your lives better, easier, faster, more efficient, whatever? The requirements are honestly secondary to that question. What do you need? Why are you doing this? And that central principle doesn't change. However, you also have to think through now when somebody can go out and develop something themselves, if they have a low-code platform or if they have some way that they can actually build something themselves, it's addictive to just get in there and start building things and look at the baby that you created. It does not mean what you created is actually useful. So taking, as a product professional, learning how to get people to think critically about what they're trying to achieve, even if you can see where they're trying to go, even if you're like, yes, the end picture sounds awesome. How do we get there? Like, what road are we taking to achieve this thing that you want to do? Getting people, pushing them to think critically themselves and talk through it themselves is, honestly, it's really an important skill to have as a project manager, product professional, whatever the case may be, kind of that support system.
Well, we get in the habit, especially as technologists or people that have been in their business for 10 years or more, you get in the habit of building the same things over and over again or doing the same things over and over again because they were valuable at one time or they innovated in a particular way. So why wouldn't you take the show on the road and just do the thing over and over again? But when you start talking about AI in particular, any disruptive tech or disruptive event can cause this, but you add in something like AI and the whole game's different now. You have an opportunity for non-technologists to build really cool stuff. Like you look at a lot of these, we went from low code, no code into, I mean, no code doesn't even begin to cover it. It's really, really no code. Right. It's English. I can type natural language into a text box. I say, I want a Python program that does X, Y, Z, and I can get 85, 90% of the way there without knowing any Python. And as a small business owner, as a show of one or two, you've got all of these cloud products that are out there now that are leveraging these large language models like ChatGPT and I've actually used one of the services to build the logo for this show, which was type in prompt. What do you want to see? What's the feel? What's the vibe? I went back 4 or 5 different times to get closer and closer and closer. And then I was 99% of the way there. I threw it into Photoshop and took it the last, 0.9% of the way. But the heavy lift for marketing and branding this podcast was AI. I'm not good at that. Yeah, I know what looks good, sort of,
Yeah.
but you know, as a force multiplier, there's not been a development like this really in decades, right? So to be afraid of it, to put it away as this is bad for humanity is dangerous, because just it's like it changes our business. If anybody can come to the table with tech, with an idea, with a product, then it's up to folks like us to ask better questions.
It really becomes up to kind of the gatekeepers almost. And I don't want to say gatekeepers because it gives the wrong impression, like we're not letting them do something unless we approve of it. But it's really more of a kind of a guardrail, right? You're helping protect them from themselves, helping them make choices and spend their time in an area that's actually going to add value. One thing I was thinking of while you were talking to Andrew is specifically speaking to the mortgage industry. The mortgage industry evolved around paper. Paper was central for decades. And then we started building systems. We started building software to do the thing that the paper did previously. But the paper was our starting place. So you even have like left and right of file terminology still used in platforms for mortgage when you haven't had a left or right of file in a while. So, well, that all rhymed. But my point is that some of these new tools that are coming out are upsetting that thought process. So people who've been in the industry for many, many decades, kind of like myself, who worked with, I was an underwriter with paper files. I mean, we had a system, but we used the paper. And now, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, that information becomes irrelevant to what the current industry is. And that means that what was comfortable and what made sense in a paper world doesn't fit anymore. It doesn't make sense anymore. And we're holding ourselves back by keeping methodologies and terminologies that are no longer relevant. So how are we pushing the envelope past what we're comfortable with and looking at what's actually better?
Yeah, and I think I've said it on this podcast before, but we have a habit as people of taking paper problems and implementing them in digital world. So like we take the same workflow, we take the same process that we did with paper files, and we replicate that same process in a web app. Is it marginally better? Yeah. Is it as good as it could be? No, not by a long shot. And I think that's the key aspect. Jess, you were trying to avoid using the term gatekeeper. You're not gatekeeping. It's education.
It has a bad connotation, and I didn't mean it that way. So it really, you're right. It's educating. It's helping them come at things from a perspective that doesn't just, immediately knee jerk into something that is right there, but helps them think through the reasons and the necessities of different concepts. Right. I love working with passionate, smart, clever people who want to solve problems. I mean, it's so much fun. And a lot of times the first solution that's thrown out starts a conversation, and that can lead you somewhere really impactful. But that doesn't mean that, that first we should do this is necessarily the best way to go.
Well, you've said it before, and I've said it in different terminology, but we both enjoy the helpful aspects or the support aspects of what we do. Yeah. Like Jess really is to borrow the Mr. Rogers term, Jess really is a helper, right? So, she's the one that wants to jump in with both feet and help and figure it out and help get all the cats wrangled and get the shots on target. On my side, I'm not necessarily the sacrificial helper personality as much as I want what I do to be impactful. And if I can make it so that the work that I do, it makes somebody else's life better, easier, faster, then I consider that a success. And when we have this conversation around AI, around digital transformation, that fits both in our wheelhouses. because on my side I can build this high horsepower technology, leverage it to do bigger and better things, and Jess can sit over here and understand. All right, look, I know what you think, and I know this is what you think you want, but let's consider this. Let's look at it from a pragmatic perspective. How do we really implement this in a way that's valuable? That's why the two of us make a good team, because I can build the thing and she can aim the gun in a lot of ways. So kind of putting a bow on that conversation, because there's a boatload of discussion we could have around digital transformation and AI and the whole nine yards. But we want to end the episode with the shout out segment that we did last week that I enjoyed doing, and I think it's valuable, not just for you listeners, but also for the folks that we work with and the folks that we have relationships with, and it's kind of fun. So you know what, we're going to do it because we like doing it, okay? But in kind of that same vein, talking about AI, so I listened to a podcast by Lex Friedman with Stephen Wolfram. It's the Lex Friedman Show. It's on Apple Podcasts, at least. I assume it's everywhere. But he did an episode in the last month, and I'm not going to remember which episode number it is, but I'll grab it and throw it in the show notes. But he did this episode with Stephen Wolfram, who is, if you come from a certain segment of engineering and CS student people, you've used Wolfram Mathematica, you've used Wolfram Alpha, you probably are aware of Wolfram language. It's been such an innovative and disruptive set of products that got me through Calculus 3, to be honest. But Stephen Wolfram is a thought leader above and beyond most of what we could ever imagine. But they were talking about artificial intelligence, and Stephen Wolfram, being who he is, came up with it, and he grew up with AI. He's invented his own certain domain specific languages around AI. He's fielded a lot of technology, and so the back and forth between Lex, who's a fairly prolific data scientist in his own right, was really educational. It's about 4 hours long, so it's a big one to bite off, but I made it through it in about 3 different yard mows. So there's a little bit of a commitment there, but if you can make it through the first half hour or so, you get a lot of value out of it. So I wanted to provide that. I'll throw it down in the show notes. And Jess, you're going to take this in a different direction, I think, kind of another thing that you've been looking at.
Yeah. So if you've probably heard of this person already. They in no way need our shout out. However, if you're looking for someone that can kind of help you think about your professional behavior in a new way, Cy Wakeman is a really fascinating person to listen to. She has a TED Talk out there. Most recently, I've listened to it. It's How to Live Happy in a Messy World, which I think fits very well into the kind of thought processes within our little Plays Well with Others segment. However, there's one story that Andrew brought up actually right before we got on this call, talking about, knee-jerk responses when somebody, maybe a stakeholder from an IT, thinking about something IT did, being frustrated about it, and they're like, okay, well, let's go talk to IT. And it's kind of her thought process around, what have you done to help the situation? Making you don't just respond with that knee-jerk response, but actually push yourself into the higher level of thinking, and don't go with that initial emotional response. And Andrew, you talked about it earlier with like, he's playing in my playground, I don't like this. No, this is actually okay. This is okay. This is good. This is what I'm here for. I'm setting up a technology that he's going to be able to utilize more effectively because he's tech savvy. And I love her concept, and how you often in life are going to have these emotional triggered responses based on just human evolution. She's like, okay, how do you step back from that? How do you condition your team to step back from that so that you have a response that's measured and appropriate? And honestly, friendlier and happier and makes everybody's life a little bit better. So she's a fantastic person to listen to. She's on all, you can find her anywhere, but Cy Wakeman, definitely encourage you to check her out.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask Jess to dig up the link to where she saw that if she can, because
I'll
that
do
is
my
a good.
best.
I have seen that TED talk. She also did a training that it was required training for me back at a few companies ago called reality based leadership. It's really good. I think there's a lot of takeaways, and it's been one of the more valuable corporate trainings that I've had to go to. So definitely
I find her
recommend it.
very actionable. Like she speaks to me in that way because
Yep.
I also like things to be actionable. I like vague, ethereal conversations about high level strategy and stuff, but if you're not taking it down a notch, you're not breaking it down, you're not making it tactical, to me it's just fun conversation. It's not necessarily valuable yet. How you translate these big concepts into actionable tasks and actionable ways to behave, that's where for me it becomes really valuable. And she does that.
And that's kind of the idea. That's our job, right? Getting cool ideas, big ideas into something that somebody can do something with.
Yes.
Well, this has been episode 17 of Plays Well with Others. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. The engagement we've gotten has been growing gradually, and I'd like to do more engagement segments in the future. So drop us a comment on the podcast platform of your choice. We're available anywhere you get your podcasts in audio. So if you're there, if you're on your phone right now, if you're mowing the yard, go ahead, give it a pause, give us a like, a rating, a share. Give us text reviews. We like text reviews. Those are cool, and they really lay out what you like, what you don't like, what you'd like to see more of or hear more of. We're also over on YouTube under the Plays Well with Others channel, so make sure to like and subscribe there and drop us a comment. That's in sparkling 1080p video, so if you want to look at us while you listen to us, then that's the place to go. But as I understand it now, the YouTube platform's allowing for podcast feeds. So who knows, if you've got a YouTube Music subscription, you may be able to get us in audio there as well. So again, this has been episode 17 of Plays Well with Others. Thanks for listening.